I thought my husband got a promotion, but 3 years later, we still lived like nothing changed. Turns out, something had. When my husband Colin came home and told me he'd been promoted, I hugged him so hard I nearly knocked the phone out of his hand. It was a Thursday, just before dinner, and Lily was sitting at the table drawing a spaceship with little hearts for windows. He stood in the doorway, still wearing his old company jacket, and said it like it was no big deal. "Director of Logistics," he muttered, dropping his keys into the bowl. "What?" I asked, frozen in place with a spatula in hand. He smiled. "Promotion, effective Monday." I remember throwing my arms around him right there between the oven and the dog's water bowl. He chuckled, kissed the top of my head, and said something like, "It's not that dramatic, Aaron." But it was. At least, it should have been. Colin had worked at North Shore Freight for 7 years. We lived in Halifax, nothing fancy. A modest 2-bedroom bungalow with a cramped kitchen, a leaky shed, and a driveway that sloped just wrong enough to make shoveling in the winter a full-body workout. I taught full-time at a junior high school. Colin made around $65K before his so-called promotion. Together, we were doing okay, but just okay. So when he told me he was now a director, the first thing I thought was, finally, we can breathe. But nothing changed. Not right away. Not in a month. Not in a year. Colin still packed the same lunches, 2 boiled eggs, a yogurt, and half a bag of trail mix. He still drove his rusty Ford Escape with the missing hubcap. He didn't want to move, didn't want to renovate, didn't even want to upgrade his phone when it started freezing every time someone called him. We need to save, he always said. More responsibility means less room to be dumb with money. I admired it, at first, but then it started feeling off. I remember sitting with my friend Tasha at our usual coffee spot near the school, venting without fully meaning to. "He got promoted over a year ago," I said, stirring my tea, "and our lives look exactly the same. Worse, even." Tasha raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean worse?" "I mean, we're still budgeting like students. He's more stressed than ever. He comes home wiped, barely talks, just stares at his phone like he's waiting for the world to collapse." "Have you seen his pay stub?" I blinked. "No." "You don't look at the accounts?" "He handles most of it. We have a shared one, but I haven't checked it in a while." Tasha leaned forward. "Aaron, that's not normal." I laughed nervously. "We trust each other. He's not hiding anything." But even as I said it, my stomach turned. That night, I asked Colin if he wanted to go over the budget for the upcoming school year. Lily needed new shoes. My car needed new brakes. We hadn't taken a vacation in 3 years. He rubbed his eyes and muttered, "Yeah, maybe this weekend." "Do you still get your stubs emailed?" "Yeah." "Can you forward them to me?" He hesitated for a split second, just long enough. "I'll dig one up for you." He never did. It nagged at me. So I checked our joint account the next morning. The balance wasn't bad, but the deposits, they didn't add up. For someone supposedly promoted to a director-level role, Colin's biweekly deposits were still hovering around $2,200. That was less than his pre-promotion pay. I scrolled through the past 6 months. Same pattern, same amount, same schedule. I went to work that day with a hollow feeling in my chest. A week later, while Lily was at a birthday party and Colin was out running errands, I called the main number for North Shore Freight. The woman who answered transferred me to HR. A man picked up. "Hi, I'm looking to confirm some employment details for Colin Malcolm," I said, trying to sound casual. The man paused. "Colin? Malcolm, Director of Logistics?" "I'm sorry," he said. "I don't know anyone by that name in that department." He said he works at the Halifax site. "We don't have a director by that name at any location. Are you sure he works here?" I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat on the stairs, staring at the wall, wondering if I had just dreamed the last 3 years. That night, I didn't say anything. Colin came home, tossed his jacket on the hook, and kissed Lily on the head as she showed him a macaroni craft she made at the party. "Did you have fun, kiddo?" he asked, ruffling her hair. She beamed. "I got cake with gummy worms on it." Colin smiled, like everything was normal, like our lives weren't built on something cracking right underneath us. I stayed quiet for days. I watched him like a stranger. He left at the same time every morning, came home like clockwork, answered texts without delay, but it all felt too smooth, too rehearsed. Then I noticed his work ID wasn't on his lanyard anymore. It used to be clipped to his jacket. I checked the hook. Nothing. When I asked where it was, he said, "New security system. Everything's digital now." I wanted to believe him, but I didn't. The next Sunday morning, I followed him. He left the house at 6:30 a.m. I told him I had a migraine and was going back to bed. Lily was with my sister for the weekend. I waited 10 minutes, then took my car and followed at a distance. He didn't go to the North Shore Freight office. He didn't even head in that direction. He drove across town toward the industrial side of the city, past warehouses, truck depots, and fenced yards full of pallets and shipping containers. He turned into a gravel lot beside a building I didn't recognize. I parked down the street, waited 5 minutes, then got out and walked. There were no logos, just a faded sign that said Bramley Third-Party Fulfillment. I peeked through a side window. Colin was inside, wearing a neon yellow vest. He was scanning boxes. I took a photo, zoomed in on the logo on the vest. Then I drove home, parked in the driveway, and sat there for almost 20 minutes. My husband didn't work at North Shore Freight. He wasn't a director. He was a warehouse worker. And I had no idea how long that had been true. I kept the photo on my phone for 3 days before saying anything. Every time Colin walked into the kitchen, every time he tucked Lily into bed or kissed my cheek like everything was fine, I thought about that vest, that warehouse, the fake promotion. I stared at the ceiling at night, wondering if he'd lied to protect me or if this was just who he really was now. On the 4th night, I opened our bedroom window, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared out at the quiet street. And I Googled Bramley Third-Party Fulfillment Halifax. It was a distribution center, one of those places that handled shipments for online retailers. Entry-level warehouse staff made $17 an hour. Some got bumped to $20 with experience or a forklift certification. Colin had been working there for who knows how long. I kept scrolling and found employee reviews. Long hours, inconsistent schedules, no benefits for part-timers. None of it fit with the story I'd been living in for the past 3 years. I told Tasha at work. I had to tell someone, and she'd always been blunt without being cruel. She didn't gasp or call him names. She just sat across from me in the empty teacher's lounge and said, "That's a lot of effort to keep a lie going." I nodded. Did he do it because he was ashamed? Maybe. Or because he thought you'd leave? I paused. Would you? Tasha looked me dead in the eye. I'd be more likely to leave over the lying than the job. I spent the next 2 evenings collecting details. Our shared bank account had become more like a deposit box. Most of our bills came from my salary. Colin had his own account, supposedly for work reimbursements and travel spending. He hadn't traveled for work in over a year, so I went to the credit union in person and asked what accounts were tied to my name. The clerk, a young guy with kind eyes and a name tag that said Eli, pulled it up. "You have one joint account," he said, "and a line of credit in both your names." My stomach dropped. "How much is on it?" He tilted the screen slightly. $8,740. 19, I don't know what I said after that. I remember my ears ringing. I remember thanking him and walking out like my legs were made of rubber. We had talked about a line of credit once, years ago, when our furnace broke and we needed emergency repairs. But we paid that off in under 6 months. This one was open last year, during the time Colin was supposed to be making more money. That night, I waited until Lily was asleep. Colin was on the couch, watching a Blue Jays game, snacking on pretzels like he hadn't built our marriage on wet paper. I stood in the doorway and said, "How long are you going to keep pretending?" He didn't turn his head. "What do you mean?" "I know you don't work at North Shore Freight. I know you haven't worked there in a long time. I followed you, Colin." He froze. "Don't lie," I added. "I have the photo." Still, he didn't look at me. He muted the game. "I lost the job 2 years ago," he finally said. 2 years? He nodded. "I got laid off. They said it was restructuring. I thought I'd find something else quickly. I didn't." "So you faked a promotion?" He stood up, ran a hand through his hair. "It wasn't supposed to last this long. I thought I'd land something better before it mattered." "You let me believe we were stable," I said. "You let me make decisions for our daughter, our future, based on a fantasy." "I didn't know how to tell you," he snapped. "You were working full-time, running the house, doing everything right, and I was a wreck. I thought if I told you, it would break everything." So you lied instead. Every day. For years. He looked down at the carpet like it might forgive him. The rest of the conversation is a blur. There was crying, some his, some mine. There was shouting, but not violent, just raw. I asked him about the line of credit. I needed it to pay off some things, he said, when we were falling behind. What things? Car insurance, groceries, Lily's camp last summer. I didn't want to tell you we couldn't afford it. You mean you couldn't afford it? I could have covered it. I would have if you told me. I didn't want to be a burden. You became a liar instead. Colin slept in the guest room that night. And the next. I told Lily he had a cold. She didn't ask questions, but she did peek into the guest room the next morning and leave a drawing of the three of us holding hands taped to the door. I met with Trevor a few days later. He was an old coworker of Colin's, one I remembered vaguely from their work vacues. I found him on Facebook, messaged him, asked if he'd be willing to talk. He said sure, no hesitation. We met at a Tim Hortons. Trevor wore a ball cap and had that look like he didn't want to be involved, but knew he had to be honest. He got laid off when they merged with Eastmar Logistics, he told me. It was a big shakeup. Half the office was let go. Did anyone else know he didn't get another job there? Trevor hesitated. I don't think so. He sort of disappeared. Changed his number. We figured he was embarrassed. Did he ever say anything about a promotion? Trevor shook his head. Not once. We were close, but he didn't say much after it happened. I thanked him and left. At that point, I had all the facts. I just didn't know what to do with them yet. That evening, Colin sat at the dining table with a notebook, scribbling numbers. He looked up as I came in. I started doing temp work before I got the warehouse job, he said. That's where some of the money went. Gas, gear. It was always just enough to keep me chasing the next check. I sat down across from him. You could have told me any of this. I know. You chose pride over partnership. I know that too. There was a long pause. Are you going to leave me? He asked. I don't know, I said honestly. He nodded. The next day, I spoke to a lawyer, not to file for divorce, just to understand my options. I wanted to protect Lily. I wanted to protect myself. And I wanted the truth to stop being something I had to drag out one exhausting piece at a time. The lawyer was kind, asked the right questions, helped me put my name on all important assets, and freeze access to any new lines of credit. This doesn't mean you're ending it, she said gently. It means you're taking care of yourself. That night, Lily sat at the kitchen table, coloring in a worksheet for school. She looked up and asked, Are we going to move? No, sweetie, I said. We're staying right here. Is Daddy staying? I hesitated. He'll be around. We're just figuring some things out. She nodded slowly. He's been quiet. I forced a smile. Sometimes adults get quiet when they've made a mess and they're trying to fix it. She went back to coloring. The mess was made. But this time, I wasn't going to pretend it didn't exist. Colin made coffee like everything was normal. He always put the milk in first, always rinsed the spoon after stirring, and always, without fail, made mine even when we weren't speaking. The morning after I met with the lawyer, I walked into the kitchen to find my mug sitting beside the sugar jar like a peace offering. I didn't drink it. I didn't say anything either. He sat down across from me in his hoodie and jeans, his warehouse uniform, and tried to make eye contact. I'm working full shifts this week, he said quietly. Warehouse just moved to nights. Better pay. I nodded once. I wasn't sure if I should thank him or ask how many more half-truths he was ready to serve. It's strange how fast your world can shrink. I used to walk through my days thinking I knew who I was married to, not because I checked or tracked or questioned, but because I trusted the rhythms, the daily things. The way he looked at Lily, the way he folded our sheets wrong every single time, the way he knew when I needed a snack before I did. Now every rhythm felt like background noise to something I never heard playing. Who was this man? And how had I lived beside him for years without noticing he was drowning? Colin started sleeping in the guest room permanently. Not because I asked him to, but because he knew better than to assume he still had a space in my bed. Lily asked about it once. Is Daddy sleeping in the little bed because he snores? I smiled and nodded. That's part of it. She accepted it, but her drawings changed again. Stick figures with space between them. A big house with only one bed. I saved one of them, tucked it in my desk drawer like evidence. We had one rule for the time being: full financial transparency. Every receipt came to me. Every pay stub got forwarded. Passwords were changed and shared. He canceled the credit card I never knew he had. It felt less like a marriage and more like a business merger with a damaged partner. But I wasn't doing this for comfort. I was doing it for Lily, for myself, for the life I built honestly while he spun fantasy after fantasy to protect his ego. The thing is, I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want him to suffer. I just wanted him to admit what he did. So one night, after Lily was asleep and the house was dark except for the hallway lamp, I asked him, "Why?" Colin sat on the arm of the couch, hands folded, staring at the floor. "I didn't think I mattered anymore," he said. "At work, I was replaceable. At home, you were doing everything better than I ever could. I felt like the dead weight no one wanted to name." "So you pretended to be more than you were?" "I didn't know how else to be enough." I swallowed hard. "You were already enough, but you turned yourself into a stranger." He nodded slowly. "I thought if I could just hold it together long enough, you'd never have to see the version of me that failed." I didn't say anything after that. I just left the room. The next morning, he handed me a notebook. It was filled with numbers. Every cent he'd made in the last 2 years. Every gig. Every shift. Every side job. Deliveries. Freelance warehouse contracts. Even cash tutoring sessions he did for some local college kids on nights he claimed he was at team meetings. There was shame on every page. But there was honesty, too. He stood in front of me and said, "This is the best I can give you right now." And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. We started couples therapy 2 weeks later. I wasn't ready to forgive him. He wasn't ready to be forgiven, but we both needed someone who could sit between us and help untangle everything we'd stuffed under the rug. Our therapist, Michael, was direct, no fluff. He asked hard questions. "Colin, when you lied about the promotion, what were you trying to gain?" "Time," Colin said, "dignity." "And Aaron, when you believed the lie, what were you afraid of losing?" I stared at the tissue box on the coffee table. Stability, a future, my version of him. We sat there, the three of us, in that small room with its ticking clock and faint lavender smell, and we slowly started dragging the truth into the light. It wasn't pretty, but it was real. At home, I moved some of his things back into our bedroom. Not all, just a pair of slippers, his good hoodie, a stack of books he'd always left on the nightstand. It wasn't a full invitation. It was a pause in the storm, a space to see if trust could grow again in soil that had once been salted. Meanwhile, I changed. I applied for a part-time administrative course at the community college, something I always thought about but never followed through on. I started walking alone before dinner. I stopped asking for permission before spending my own money. Colin noticed. "I like seeing you like this," he said once, careful not to overstep. I said nothing, because I didn't do it for him. One night, I caught him sitting at the table, watching Lily do her homework. She was bent over her math book, tongue between her teeth, muttering numbers under her breath. Colin watched like it was the most fragile moment in the world. And I saw it. The version of him that still loved us, still wanted to show up, even if he didn't know how to do it without lying. He didn't ask to move back into our bedroom. I didn't offer. Not yet. But when Lily had a school event the following week, and Colin was the one who packed the lunch, ironed the uniform, and walked her to the door, I started to see something I hadn't seen in a long time. Not the man I married. The man he was becoming now that he had nothing to hide. We didn't tell many people what happened. Tasha knew. My sister suspected. Sharon, my mom, asked once but didn't push when I said, "It's been a hard year." What mattered most was that Lily felt safe, that I felt grounded, that Colin was willing to rebuild without guarantees. And he was. Every day in small ways. He still made my coffee, still rinsed the spoon, still waited for me to invite him back into a life he'd almost lost. I didn't leave Colin, not because I forgot what he did, not because I couldn't live without him, and definitely not because he deserved a clean slate. I stayed because I wanted to see who he became when he stopped pretending. And because I finally understood that staying doesn't mean standing still. It took 6 months before I let him move back into our bedroom. Not because of a big conversation or some movie moment. It just happened. One night, Lily had a nightmare. I was already in bed. Colin heard her crying first. He brought her in, curled up beside me, and she fell asleep holding both our hands. When I woke up the next morning, he was still there and I didn't ask him to leave. But I didn't say welcome back either. Some things don't need words. By that time, the therapist was no longer a regular fixture in our week, but his voice still lingered in our house like a guide we weren't quite ready to forget. We had new habits now. Every Saturday, we checked in about money. Out loud. No more silent trust based on assumptions. Every receipt went into a folder. Every paycheck was split into categories. Colin even made spreadsheets, color-coded, annotated. Overcompensating, he asked once, showing me a pie chart for our heating expenses. Maybe, I said, but I'll allow it. We laughed. Not like we used to, but close. I changed too. Not in the big dramatic ways people post about online. I didn't cut off all my hair or run a marathon or start making TikToks about emotional resilience. I just stopped apologizing for asking questions. If something felt off, I said it. If I needed time alone, I took it. If I didn't want to carry Colin's shame for him, I didn't. And he never asked me to. I finished my part-time administrative course that spring. Tasha came to my final presentation, sat in the back row, and clapped louder than anyone when I stepped down from the podium. Afterward, we got shawarma and sat on the hood of my car watching the fairy lights dance along the water. "You good?" she asked. "I think I am," I said. "Not fixed, but not broken either." She nodded. "You didn't let it define you?" "No," I said, "but I let it change me." Colin found a full-time job at a shipping company out in Dartmouth, still warehouse work but with benefits and regular hours. No fake titles. No pretending. Every day he came home sweaty, exhausted, but grounded. I don't think I'd ever seen him more at peace. One night, over dishes, he said, "This is the first time I feel like I'm showing up, not selling some version of myself." I looked at him, really looked at him, and I believed it. Not because he said it, but because I could finally see it. Lily thrived. Kids are strange that way. They sense everything, but don't always absorb it the way adults do. She never asked again why her dad was in the guest room. She stopped drawing beds with gaps between them. She started telling bedtime stories where the heroes were quiet people who always tell the truth, even if it's scary. She didn't get that from a book. She got it from watching us try. There was one night, almost a year after everything broke open, that still lingers with me. Colin and I were sitting on the back step, sharing a blanket, sipping tea. The stars were out, Lily was asleep, and the house finally felt like it belonged to us again, not to the lie. He turned to me and asked, "Do you love me?" I didn't answer right away. "I don't love the man who lied to me," I said, "but I'm starting to love the one who stayed when it got hard." He nodded. He didn't ask for more than that. He knew better now. We never told many people. Our families still think the hardest thing we've been through was Lily's ear infection in 2nd grade. I used to feel guilty about that, like we owed people the truth. Now I know better. Some truths are for building boundaries, not bridges. And the people who matter most are the ones who respect that you've changed without needing to know every bruise that shaped it. Colin and I aren't perfect. We still argue, still get it wrong, but now we fight with both feet on the ground. No hiding, no silent battles. And that feels like something stronger than peace. It feels like real. Last week, Lily brought home a short story she wrote for school. Her teacher had circled a sentence and written "powerful" in red pen. It said, "My mom is the smartest person I know because she sees things other people don't, and she never lets us pretend when it's time to be honest." I cried in the car after drop-off that morning, not because I'd survived what Colin did, but because I'd survived who I used to be. The woman who ignored the signs, who trusted without checking, who confused comfort for love, she's gone. Not because of Colin, because of me. And I wouldn't trade that version of myself for any promotion in the world. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed, please like, share, and subscribe for more content. If you want to share your stories, please comment below. Additionally, what is your opinion on the poster's decision?